Drow society has never been kind to third-born sons, and it was no exception for our champion. But armed with the ability to call on ancient magic, as well as the power to reanimate the dead, this druid sets out to get revenge and rule the world, culling anyone in his path along the way, all while trying to remove the parasite that was planted in his head. But first, the rules. No other party members, though temporary companions such as summons are a-okay. No multiclassing, no illithid powers, no barrelmancy or chestmancy, no saving in the middle of combat, and this is a tactician run, so we'll be keeping it that way. With all that said, don't forget to like and subscribe, as it goes a long way towards helping out. Now, on to character creation. Starting off is our race, and mainly for lore reasons, we're gonna be a druidic drow this go around. The class, naturally, therefore, is druid, as I'm sure you could have guessed. Our beginning cantrips are Shillelagh and Thornwhip to give us multiple options in combat, especially during the early game. The background of choice for this character is Sage, since he's been reading long and hard about world domination in order to prepare. Skill proficiencies and ability scores end up looking like this, with a focus on wisdom and constitution so our spells stay strong and stay active. We make our new power-hungry protagonist look ready for the part and give him a name, and thus Woodrow Winterspore is ready for the journey of a lifetime. Woodrow awakes on a burning nautiloid with a burning need to get to safety, but as we're heading to the helm we encounter a talking brain by the name of Us, a potential minion and intellect devourer who needs a little help getting freed, and after putting our dexterity to work we get the first of our army of followers. As we're progressing further we get jumped by a Githyanki soldier, and then a few imps jump our whole merry little gang. Us immediately starts proving to Woodrow that they're a useful pawn, and while no one's looking we get revenge on that foul Gith for threatening us. The rest of the imps go down pretty easy with our intellect-devouring pal getting yet another crit. Once we make it to the helm, we find a whole host of problems that our army isn't quite large enough to deal with. So we just send Us on distraction duty and skedaddle our way all the way to the controls at the end. Then we tickle the tentacles together, get blasted by a dragon that will surely live to regret it, get hit in the head with a rock, and somehow miraculously land safely on a beach below. Next morning we awake and it's finally time to start ruling the world. But first, look at this fun little hat that we got. It does kind of mess with our hairdo, but we'll rock it for now. After that, we immediately find a trapped illithid and get revenge on those cephalopod sickos that kidnapped us. Unfortunately, as we're exploring further, we stumble across a cultist goblin raid on a druid encampment, and for whatever reason, the goblins start attacking us too. The fight doesn't start off great for our temporary allies, with the enemies hitting real hard and them missing real often. Woodrow, however, is doing a mighty fine job on his end, besides getting shot by a ray of sickness at least. And the Druid Grove folks ain't doing too bad either. From here, the fight progresses pretty swimmingly. The bad guys start to get knocked down quicker and quicker, and Mr. Winterspore stays standing. We only lose a couple allies, but you know, they were useless anyways. Before you know it, that was the last of them. For our efforts, we get level 2, granting amongst other things the ability to wild shape into a myriad of different animals, but more importantly, we get our subclass, the Circle of Spores, which lets us use both Symbiotic Entity and Halo of Spores, the former being a great way to increase our survivability and damage with our wild shape charges each short rest, plus it scales with our level, and the latter being essentially free damage each turn as a way to weaponize our reaction if we're doing nothing else with it. To round us out, we also get Bone Chill at this level for a nice way to deal range damage. Continuing on, we get poking around the Druid Grove for answers, and find tensions between the Druids and their tiefling refugee guests are a wee bit strained. In fact, we find the Druid leader getting ready to murk a kid, but the kid was a thief and we'd do the same, so we let it play out. Then we meet the healer Nettie, who instantly racially profiles us and then compliments her own bedside manner. Sure, Nettie, if you say so. But we need a healer for our tadpole, so we tell her what's up, only for her impeccable bedside manner to continue with her asking us to swallow poison, and then when we decline, she outright tries to murder us. So this one's really on her. Either way, it seems the druids here are pretty useless, may have perhaps we can track down the cults and pretend to work with them if we want answers. First, however, we play a little jig with the tiefling girl to show that we're superior to all these people even musically. As we get heading in the direction of the cult though, we get jumped by a mysterious stranger, one who quickly reveals himself to be a deal-making devil, who offers to cure our tadpole in exchange for our soul, but we're still using that, so we just warn him to not talk down to us and continue on our merry way. Next on our journey, we meet the infallible and unfortunately masterless Senor Scratch. He's preoccupied at the moment, but we leave him our scent so he can join us on our journeys later. And right nearby is an abandoned village that we stroll into and almost get jumped by a gaggle of goblins. Upon realizing that we have superior drow blood flowing through our veins though, they wisely back off. Another group of gangly goblins is found further in the village, but they follow suit and scram at the sight of us. If only all of our foes were so wise. They happen to be playing with a deep gnome that's tied to a windmill, who is awfully rude to us when we chat with him. So we boot up the old windmill and make sure he never has the chance to be rude again. All of this is enough for level 3, granting us more spell slots and access to level 2 spells, such as Moonbeam and Spike Growth. Moonbeam is especially fantastic for its ability to damage enemies when you place it and when they start their turn, meaning it basically deals its damage twice, also making it an excellent upcasting target. Spike Growth, meanwhile, is fantastic area denial and great should we encounter hordes of mobs. From there, we bully our way past some more goblins, and once in the goblin camp, hear about a drow in charge by the name of Minthara. But first, we get exploring and find this dude who really wants to give us a beating. And hey, since it reminds us of home, we decide to let him. After passing just a few checks, we get the Leviatar's Love permanent buff, granting us a +2 to attacks and saves when we're at low health, which is always handy to have. And before we go any further, we return to camp to see that the best boy has finally caught up to us. Then we get exploring other nooks and crannies and find a big old ladder heading back to our home turf, the Underdark. As we get wandering around here, we find a cool looking sword in a stone, and after performing a blasphemous ritual against the drow god that kept us down for so long, this is how we get Phalar Aluve. This fantastic little sword will be a mainstay of our build later on, since its ability to emit an aura that increases the damage enemies take with each hit will be phenomenal once we've got the ability to summon a lot of creatures. We aren't proficient with it, so our melee capabilities get a little worse when using it, but either way we won't be using it for a little while. Regardless, keep it in mind. Further down the way, we get invited into a myconid colony, and if there's anyone we can get along with, it's definitely some funky fungal fellas. Inside the colony is Blurg, who sells us Melf's first staff as our real main weapon for now. It's nothing fancy, but it does make our spells just a little bit better. Right next door is an incapacitated deep gnome who's more than happy to part with her boots of speed. These bad boys will be our main booties for the whole playthrough, since there's really nothing else we care that much about, and the ability to get out of tight spots as a bonus action is very helpful. Next up, we palaver with our fungal pal Sovereign Spa, and he tells us all about some soon-to-be dead Dwergar by the lake causing him problems. Don't worry, we'll sort them all out. When we find them, they think we're on their side though, and seeing this as a chance to dissolve their whole operation, we play along. They tell us the rest of their operation is across the lake at Grimforge, so across the lake we go on their boat that we steal. Once we make it to the other side, it turns out there's another drow cultist who got himself stuck in a cave-in. And it really isn't hard to find some folks ready to beat the heck out of Nier, and since we're not the biggest fan of fellow drow, we agree to help. However, first we've got to make sure the rest of the cult doesn't see what we're about to do, since we're still trying to infiltrate. Shortly after doing that, we hit level 4, granting some more spell slots, a new cantrip for which we pick resistance to occasionally boost up our saving throws when we need, and far more importantly, a feat in the form of an ability score improvement to bump our wisdom up to 19, increasing the modifier by a further 1 to help out our spells a bit more. With that done, we pop open the cave-in, and out comes strolling the man himself, Nier, who makes the mistake of instantly trying to boss us around, but we're certainly not going to be told what to do by this guy. As the fight kicks off, our Dwergar minions get to work, and on our turn we summon a flaming spear. Side note, we did name all the summons you'll see in this playthrough. This one's name is Richard Ball-duran. If you want to see the rest, go check out the description. We also get our our shillelagh going this turn. Our allies continue to put in some work, but the enemies are just kinda better at it, especially when they start mind controlling the focus on our side. Well, at least the flaming sphere is doing something. On our turn, thanks to a hill giant elixir we took earlier, we're able to shove one goon to a burning demise, and outright no-clip another one into some eternal abyss beneath the world. Plus, we finally do some damage with our halo of spores. Some other folks come into the fight on our side with a vengeance. Well, Nier does not much of anything, and the enemy's lines are continually called down. Richard is also here, doing itty bits of damage. Fun fact, by the way, Nier is one of 5 creatures in the game with a muscular feature, which is why our attempts to shove or throw him into the lava both fail. Gotta give props where props are due, my man's got a mean workout routine. He is also smart enough to run far away from the lava after seeing our attempts. So on our turn, we just take out whoever is closest and pass it along, leaving all of our myriad minions to continue to wail away on him. Another round of the gang bullying Nier, and that is him down for the count, with his sole crony following suit. Before they bounce, the Dwergar we worked with tell us about a place called Moonrise Towers, where these cultists are hunkering down. Sounds like we'll be heading there eventually. For now though, we head deeper into the forge and encounter some sentient armor who are easily surprised with a thunder wave, followed up by a shove to get the one that succeeded their save. While they're still surprised, we also yeet another one into the lava lake below. Meanwhile, they just spend their turns dashing to reach us. You know what that means, more yeeting off a cliff. Then they get kinda stuck for a few turns, so we just blast them with a few bone chills until eventually they get unstuck and start running up a convenient cliffside. Gee whiz, I sure hope nothing bad happens to them. After that dude, we take out one more with the halo of spores and get the last one with the good old long live the king strategy. With them out of the way, we grab the mithril ore they were guarding, as well as the scale mail mold. Then we head to the forge proper and pop in both of our materials before lowering the platform and at last opening the lava valve. Only problem is when we do, out comes Grim itself, the automated guardian of this place. We do our best, but unfortunately, no matter what we do, we get wiped here. We're just not quite tanky enough. Even from full health, we get one shot. So we decide to come back at a little bit of a later time. In the meantime, we chat with some ogres that we missed in the village earlier who reveal that they're up for hire. So after lying to them and saying we'll pay them after they fight for us, they give us their bone horn to blow at our convenience, summoning them whenever and wherever. Then we finally gab with Minthara, who is more than happy to help us get revenge on those druids. And while we don't like taking orders, especially from a drow, it's easy to slip back into old habits, so we follow her plan for now. The next day we head to the druid grove and sound the horn to signal the goblin horde to attack in full force. We even go the extra mile and open the gate for them too. Just like that, the slaughter begins. And it really is quite the slaughter. Just look at this initiative order. There's like 3 defenders and none of them last very long at all. I certainly would never go so far as to call this a fight. Deeper in, the massacre continues, with Minthara getting in there herself and helping with these repugnant refugees, but the final blow is all ours. Afterwards, all the civilians incapable of fighting are easy enough to mow down. Only problem is Minthara's getting a little eepy and needs us to finish the job on the druids by our lonesome. Well, I suppose at least we've got some goblins to help us. Or not. Thankfully, a couple survived to tank the spells that we really don't want to deal with, as well as deal some damage to Kaga. When we get the chance, Woodrow conjures up those ogre minions from earlier who somehow come in behind enemy lines. And we also summon our flaming sphere for good measure, well breaking Kaga's concentration with Halo of Spores. Said sphere whittles away at an enemy. Most of the baddies go after the goblins, though embarrassingly enough Kaga loses concentration again, but they do finish one off. On our turn, we just poke away at the enemies a little bit while continuing to retreat up the stairs. The ogres finally start dunking on some druids. The last goblin goes down for the count, and so does a druid's canine companion. With Lump and his pals in full force, the enemies congregate on them and focus their fire, completely ignoring us. Since we don't actually want to pay that 1k gold we promised, we sit this one out in the hopes that the ogres will just barely lose. But it doesn't really seem to be going that way. In fact, they're kind of obliterating the druids with them not doing much to fight back. Before you know it, the ogres will clean them up, and oh god, they're coming for the payment that we don't have. Quick, drop a spike growth. Oh, they're not aggroing at all as they walk through it. Well, I guess we just have to kill them before the dialogue triggers. That's one way to get out of a debt. Or rather, I mean, that went exactly as planned, all in a day's work. Later that day, the goblins throw a little party to celebrate the impeccable strategist that is Woodrow Winterspore. Minthara also tries to put the moves on us, but Woodrow is done giving in to the whims of those ranked higher in society than himself, so we go to bed alone. Only for Minty to not take the rejection well, so somehow we end up fighting all the goblins as well. But we chose this campsite for a reason. We misty step away and drop a fat spike growth outside of this natural choke point. Now we can poke down the enemies from a distance while they throw themselves against our spikes trying to reach us, making sure to end our turns in cover so the ranged folk can't hit us either. It takes quite a while to get them all down, especially since some of them are smart enough to not unalive themselves via spike growth, but eventually we do manage to get them all, including Minthara. No longer will we be bossed around by anyone. The next day, we get heading towards the nearby mountains, and along the way notice this fun little prism thingy in our bag. So we drop it, only for it to come back, and then it does so again, and also one more time again, and another time after that. You know what, we'll just keep it. And the morning after that, Scratch gives us his ball, letting us summon him as a familiar once per short rest as our first reliable minion. Once we finally get to our destination, we find Lady Esther, who sells us the Periapt of Wound Closure. This is pretty much going to be the amulet that we use forever, since its ability to maximize healing from potions and remove random chance is kind of incredible and makes us so dang tanky. Then we get going onwards and find some Githyanki holed up in an abandoned temple who seem to be investigating the cult on their own. Since we want answers, we get looking for a way inside and find a hidden passageway just down a cliff face leading directly into their cozy creche. Unfortunately, even with a scroll of charm person, the guards don't seem to buy that we belong in here and a fight breaks out. We immediately cast Moonbeam on one of them, which also hits us despite saying it wouldn't, followed by a misclick leading to an opportunity attack that breaks concentration and almost kills us. So we take a speed potion, hustle away, and reactivate symbiotic entity. Funnily enough, the Gith we charmed is unable to hurt us at all, and the other one spends their turn catching up to us. So we Moonbeam them again, being extra careful this time, and thanks to our extra action we can move the Moonbeam right on top of them to trigger the damage a second time. Then we start healing up, though not with the Periapt quite just yet. Our singular adversary continues to wallop at us, almost bringing us down yet again. But with one more barrage, we finally manage to bring them down low enough so they burn away at the start of their turn. Here's another fun fact for you. Moonbeam doesn't count as us dealing damage, meaning it doesn't break charm person, so it's a rough go for the soon not to be survivor. Thankfully, it seems those guards weren't well regarded since no one cares that they're dead, and we're able to go up to Jacques Gira to buy the Gloves of Dexterity. These fantastic finger protectors boost our dex up to a whopping 18, which increases not only our saves and AC, but also our initiative, helping us get better positions in fights and destroy enemies before they can even act. You can bet your bottom dollar we'll be wearing these fellas for a long time. Then we head upstairs and find some drunk and sleepy kobolds to test our power against. And despite this definitely being a great spot for spike growth, we decide to give Flaming Spear a shot, since if it's not good here, when will it be good? Only for it to get the bejesus beaten out of it, fail to blow up a fire wine barrel, and shortly thereafter die a sad and unremarkable death. So we just start taking out enemies the old-fashioned way, while kiting them with our boots of speed to ensure we don't get surrounded. This strategy takes a little while, but bit by bit they're slowly whittled away with or without the help of the Flaming Sphere. Either way, our little detour has earned us level 5, granting 3rd level spells, most importantly of which is from our subclass, Animate Dead, a spell that at the moment can be used to summon either a high damage skeleton or a tanky zombie from a corpse. Using higher level spell slots will get us more and improved undead, but regardless, it's always a tedious spell to cast since it requires a humanoid corpse that was not killed by acid, fire, lightning, necrotic, necrotic or radiant damage, which, as I'm sure you've noticed, is half of the damage types in the game and most of the ones that we deal. Either way, we continue on and find a couple lads yelling at some old lady, who quickly reveals that she's got some sort of necromantic prowess before disappearing in a puff of smoke. Right down the road is her little tea house, where she's torturing some whiny girl, but it's here she offers to make a deal with us to remove our tadpole. We're not silly enough to take her up on that, but we do snoop around and find a hidden basement, which upon entering causes Ethel to show off her true form and demand that we leave, but where's the fun in that? Instead, Woodrow keeps going and finds a bunch of brainwashed baddies in our way, and it's really nothing that Moonbeam, as well as Best Boy Scratch, and a whole lot more Moonbeams can't solve. Then we hop our way all the way down to the bottom and get preparing with an invisibility potion. We make a quick pit stop to free Mayrina in case she knows something that we need, and fire off a darkness arrow to hide in when Ethel pops out. Then we fire off, you guessed it, a Moonbeam to start the fight. She does her little thing where she splits off into a bunch of clones, but since she can't target us while we're hidden in the darkness, the turns pass by uneventfully. This means we spend our turns firing off Moonbeams left and right, refreshing the darkness arrows and using a speed pot to make it go by a little faster. Until eventually Ethel surrenders, begging for her life, while offering us power in exchange for letting her go with the girl. But we want to know what the girl knows, so we intimidate our way into getting both. The power-up comes in the form of +1 to our wisdom, bumping us up to a nice even 20, and Mayrina tells us Ethel was gonna bring back her husband using necromancy. Sure enough, we find a wand in the back room for just that purpose, and with the girl begging us to do so, how could we not bring poor old Connor back to life, as an undead servant of course. This gives us the second marriage item, letting us as an action conjure Connor, who's a pretty standard zombie that lasts for 10 turns. The kicker is there's no limit to how many times we can do this, making him the ultimate unkillable tank. Since we'll be needing more bodies, we head back to the Underdark beach where the Dwergar are and grab all their corpses laying about, sending them to our camp. In the process, however, they get a wee bit annoyed at us for stealing their boat earlier and a fight kicks off. We don't really want to do this without backup though, so we flee for now and go recruit Sovereign Glut, who also wants to dunk on some Dwergar. Our last bit of prep is assembling the gang squad. With every summon we can muster, Glut even gets in on the fun himself a little bit. Then it's fightin' time. Scratch draws first blood on the enemies, we summon our flaming sphere yet again, and a couple of the other minions we've got focus fire on the same fella as Scratch. Unfortunately, they've got undead of their own to muddle up the fight. When it's back to us, we start converging on our next target, but after only a couple of hits on him, he gets overwhelmed and blows himself up. Fair enough. The squad cleans up the enemy summons with the rest of the round. After that, the fight splits into 2 mini scuffles, with different followers focusing different enemies, but the Flaming Sphere's flaming trail burns us and makes us drop concentration on itself. Either way, with just 2 enemies left and more than enough bodies to distract them both, it's not difficult to whittle them away until the fight is all cleaned up, with us making it out almost entirely unscathed. Turns out having 6 meat shields to tank for you is pretty dang good. Once that fight is done, we return to Sovereign Spa to tell him that both the Dwergar and Nier have already been dealt with, giving us the greatest reward a boy could ask for, a dance party with some funky fun guys. Oh yeah, and Bliss Spores for a 1d6 bonus to all of our rolls until the next time we rest, which should hopefully help us out back at the Forge. To be sure, we also summon a zombie, Scratch, and Connor, and prep with a jump spell and strength elixir on ourselves. Then Scratch attacks the lava valve to get this party started. Woodrow tries to shoot the gargantuan golem to get his attention but misses. Scratch's auto-pathing for a jump takes him into the lava, and Grim stops exactly where we want him to anyways. Here we learn the hard way that every zombie except for Connor can't actually attack items for some unknowable reason, and Connor can't jump. So we use our halo of spores to bring down the hammer, crushing Grim for a buttload while summoning a horde of magma mephits. but a scroll of Ice Storm that we managed to get earlier easily eradicates them, only for the big fella to waste its turn just standing up. To try and keep it where it is, we resummon the unkillable Connor to the center platform, but that just results in him getting wombo comboed into oblivion and Grim wandering off regardless. Meaning we've got to reposition to the opposite end, conjure Ol Reliable yet again to distract, and pray Grim actually moves where we want it to this time. Thankfully it works, and with Undead Fortitude, our lad even manages to stay standing, well, at least for a moment. Since the Titanic Terminator barely moved, we get to crush it one more time, and while it's getting up, hop on over to the center platform to finish it off with a good old whack. Our reward for manhandling this machine is access to the forge to craft both the Adamantine Shield and the Adamantine Scale Mail. The shield is exceptional in that not only does it give immunity to crits, but it also makes it so enemies that miss us get sent reeling, further reducing their odds to land future hits. Adamantine Scale Mail is pretty good too, with a base AC of 16, universal damage reduction of 1, also crit immunity, and if anyone should land a blow on us, this also applies a couple turns of reeling. Both of these are pretty dang good, but the shield is gonna be sticking around for a little while longer than the armor. To make sure we're not missing anything, Widrow does a tad more exploring in the village from earlier and finds some spider-infested caves. The first set of arachnid adversaries we find lurking down here go down pretty smoothly after just a few rounds. But as we progress further in, we find a house-sized spider trouncing about, and that calls for a bit more prep. First we ensure we've got a skeleton sharpshooter to back us up, then we sneak in and break the web Mama Spider is lurking on, before critting the big lady herself, who immediately spews out a gaggle of newborns. Thankfully she ends her turn on yet another web where our skeleton that was hanging back can knock her down. Scratch gets obliterated instantly, but our calcium-powered pal continues to lay into the queen. Meanwhile, the little whippersnappers get us a couple times, but with a poison resist elixir and our damage reduction, we're feeling absolutely fine. The matriarch jaunts on up to our remaining summon to chomp away as well. Unfortunately, we can't quite make it to his aid since we're busy channeling our dark side by massacring these younglings, and using Halo of Spores to destroy the webs that the other spiders are standing on. Still, our heroic skeleton is more than willing to sacrifice his unlife to damage the matriarch in the process. Now it's just us against the world, and that really can't stand, so we get the flaming spear out as well as keep poking enemies with our halo as usual. They do a pretty good job missing us in return, the sphere gets some tickles in as well, and Mama just kinda meanders about down there. To keep them occupied, we summon Connor into the mix down there, only to watch as yet more spiderlings hatch from their eggs. On our next turn, we finally manage to take out one of the larger spiders, whose surviving partner continues to miss terribly, and wanting to get something done, the flaming sphere hops down to low ground and starts wailing away. But the big lady teleports on over to us and breaks her concentration right afterwards, letting us cast an actually good spell in the form of Moonbeam to maybe hopefully end this fight at some point. The spiderlings, by the way, are in their worst matchup since Connor is basically immune to all their attacks. Finally, at the start of her turn, the matriarch at last goes down. My sweet beloved Moonbeam takes out the remaining phase spider, and Connor eviscerates the hatchlings. It's just so dang hard to justify Flaming Sphere when Moonbeam exists. Either way, we grab a shiny little rock that the spiders were guarding that radiates necromantic energy. This energy leads us all the way to a basement in the village with a hidden door lurking within. Behind this hidden door is a magical mirror who asks us to answer their riddles 3. Only then will we pass through free. In here is yet another hidden room with a book called The Necromancy of Thay inside. The shiny rock we got earlier is what lets us read this thing after passing a few relatively tough wisdom saves. Unfortunately, we can't read it all right now, but we do at least get the Forbidden Knowledge permanent buff, granting a +1 to wisdom saving throws and ability checks for the rest of our playthrough. Elsewhere in our journeys, we stumble across a couple of fellas trapped in a cave by some gnolls, and after they pay us to fight alongside them, a scuffle begins. Widrow keeps it simple to start and just uses an ice knife on one of the ranged folks. The enemies eviscerate our summons a wee bit, and the folks who hired us prove why they needed to as they throw alchemist fire and run up to the enemies. Connor shows him what for on his turn, then we get to use a wall of fire scroll we've been saving for just this occasion. At this point, our zombie friend gets got, our employers fire off quite the solid shot, and the wall of fire continues to have been a good thought. With the wall of fire having cleaned up the last of our foes, and Flynn staying focused on the friendly thugs, over the course of the next couple rounds, we use a couple thorn whips to slowly yank her sorry butt into the void. Since no one is watching, we also pop open the treasure they were guarding, finding a mysterious iron flask inside. Wonder what we can do with that. Continuing on, we track our way back to where these folks came from, convincing not one, but two whole separate guards to let us into their hideout. Whereupon, we immediately get looting everything that's not bolted down, including some gloves that you might see later on. And at last, there's one final thing for us to do before we move on. Time to get some answers from the creche. We talk to someone in charge and show her the mysterious artifact that made an appearance earlier. But it doesn't like her very much and seems to want to stick with us, so albeit grudgingly, she lets us go talk to her boss. And this fella gets it. He's a real fan of our unique abilities and seems to appreciate our slaughtering skills. Let's see how long it stays that way. When we present the artifact, their Lich Queen Vlaakith shows up, who admittedly is a little beyond our necromantic prowess right now. She is still, at the very least, wise enough to kneel to her future king of the world. Regardless, we're not able to decline her request when she asks us to head inside the prism and murk whoever we find. So off we go into the astral plane where the voice in our head resides. A voice that really isn't too pleased with us. After all, this is who's been preventing us from turning into a mind flayer. If they are who they say they are, we need them alive and well if we're gonna make it forward in our journey, so we spare them. Before we head back out, she gives us a bless effect, and we prep for the fight by summoning our fellas, buffing them up with Long Strider, downing a Bloodlust elixir, and going out with Phalar Aluve's Shriek active. Indeed, as we get out there, our final fight of the act begins. We start by using a speed potion to whack away at one dude a couple times, killing but not proccing Bloodlust since the Shriek aura is what did them in. Then we Halo Spores another Gith goon, which procs Phalar Aluve twice due to the way Halo Spores works with a symbiotic entity active. Afterwards, we get shot just a little bit, our skeleton tries to do the same to the enemies but fails, and we get a nice little opportunity attack before getting mind blasted as well. Head honcho Wargaz also uses his Mind Steel Tempest at this point, increasing his damage and AC for each person he's linked to, while simultaneously making those folks vulnerable to psychic and reducing their AC. When it gets to Team Winterspore, we work together with Scratch to finish off the remaining Ardent, and do a bit of moonbeaming on Big Boss and his little lackey. Following that, we take a couple nasty shots from the crossbowman, which knocks out our concentration. The remaining folks also get extraordinarily close to taking us out, but a few lucky misses keeps us standing. So when it's back to us, we can symbiotic entity to get our temp HP back, full heal with just one potion, and run all the way to the other side of the room where we can refresh our speed potion in peace. This does leave both Scratch and Connor out in the cold to get taken out by our foes. We learn the hard way that any saving throws we force against the leader causes us to take psychic damage when he succeeds, but still we Thunderwave to get the Mind Steel link off of us. Then we use a Blur Scroll to impose disadvantage on their attacks and retreat further back in the room, meaning all the baddies spend their turns chasing after us. Meanwhile, we get to pelt one of them with ice knives and spores to finish them off, then summon Connor to tank for us since our last speed potion is about to run out. But they get infinite free Misty Steps to ignore him with. Even still, the Wargaz ends up missing 4 times in a row while the crossbowman seems to have given up on getting to us. The Psionic Revenge breaks our concentration, so we start whittling him down with Moonbeams and Connor until our concentration on that spell is also broken. Eventually, we just resort to using a Blink Scroll to prevent us from burning through all of our healing potions this fight, and very slowly whittle him down, since he can't actually kill us in one round without any help. Once he's been dealt with, it's fairly straightforward to take out the surviving crossbowmen as well. While we were fighting them, we noticed these statues could move, and when moved into the right spot, reveal a hidden passageway. At the end of said corridor is an awfully shiny looking mace that we approach after taking out whatever trap this is. It's a little resistant to go, but we yoink it out with a bit of effort, causing a big old cannon on the roof to get ready to blow the whole place sky high. Luckily for us, there's a portal leading to the outside right here, and we've got a Featherfall Scroll to get off the roof safe and sound. Sucks to be those guys. I wonder what Wargaz thinks of our killing prowess prowess now. Either way, the mace we got is a little too hard on our poor drow eyes, so we just toss it on the ground for someone else to find, aka I don't think using it fits this character. At last, knowing we've got to get to Moonrise next, we set out on the mountain road towards our destination in the Shadow-Cursed Lands, where we certainly won't be the only one raising undead, though ours will undoubtedly be the strongest. Thank you all so very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this start of a new adventure. It gets pretty wacky in the later acts, so stay tuned. If you want to decide what class I play next, there's a poll currently up in the community tab of my channel. And as always, a special thanks to our Storyteller tier members, Bunny Warren, Damon, Larry Renzokukin, Shirtles, Mark Rainbow, Vivian, Garrett Sapp, Rat King, Blaze Lays, Saturn Girl Pining, Lovely Velvet, Apricot Antlers, Kamui, Beltfed Joe, Lumina, Jans Hine, Steven SSD, Game Life Coaching, Shark Attack, El Guardia, Clock Vader, and Alara Luna.